The most dangerous version of you is not the one that yells, slams doors, throws things, or turns pain into a public scene. Loud anger is easy to read. People see it coming. They brace for it. They even know how to use it against you. But there is another version of you that shakes a room in a much deeper way. It is the one that goes quiet and stays quiet. Not the childish silence that wants attention. Not the passive-aggressive silence meant to punish. This is a different kind of silence. It comes from sharp clarity. It comes from the moment you understand that some people are no longer worth the cost of your words. Something changes inside you. You stop rising to every hook thrown in your direction. You stop defending your heart to people who already decided to twist it. You stop acting extra soft just to earn love from people who never planned to give it. The shift happens inside first, where nobody can see it, but once it happens, the air changes. The room feels different. The people who once fed on your reactions suddenly feel hungry because the supply is gone. And that is when they notice. Stay with me because this is where the real change begins. For a long time, your empathy was mistaken for weakness. Your kindness was read as a lack of power. Your patience was treated like permission. People thought that if you forgave them once, you would forgive them forever. They thought that because you stayed through hard times, you would also stay through disrespect. They believed your big heart meant they could keep taking and never pay a price. That was their mistake. And maybe for a while it was yours too. For years you carried emotional weight that was never yours to carry. You managed other people's moods. You softened their insecurity. You cleaned up their messes. You learned how to calm storms you did not create, and somewhere inside that pattern you started calling it strength. You wore endurance like a medal. You told yourself that if you kept being patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, one day it would finally come back to you as respect. But the hard truth is this: it was not strength, it was survival. You learned early that being tuned into everyone else kept you safe. You became excellent at reading the room because you had to be. You could sense a mood shift in seconds. You could feel tension before anyone spoke. You knew how to stop explosions before they started. That deep awareness eventually turned into powerful empathy. You could meet someone and feel their pain fast. You could hear what they were not saying. You could pick up patterns other people missed. But without boundaries, that gift did not protect you. It drained you. You used your strongest ability to protect people who were wounding you. And that is the trap. The turning point comes when your awareness stops working for fear and starts working for wisdom. You stop using intuition to rescue others and start using it to guard yourself. You begin to see everything with unsettling precision. Not only the manipulative habits in other people, but also the ways you abandoned yourself just to keep a bond alive. You see the over-explaining. You see the overgiving. You see how often you traded peace for connection. And once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. That is when the old version of you starts to die. Then comes a strange kind of exhaustion, the kind that sleep cannot fix. It is not simple tiredness. It is deeper than that. It is the moment your mind and body decide they are done taking part in chaos, drama, and repeating cycles that never change. It is a soul-level fatigue, a nervous system shutdown. You reach a point where talking feels too expensive. Arguing feels pointless. Explaining feels embarrassing. You stop trying to prove your pain to people committed to ignoring it. You stop asking for basic respect because you finally understand that real respect is never something you should have to beg for. You stop trying to convince people that you matter because at last you begin to see your own value without their approval. This is why the shift looks so quiet from the outside. You do not explode. You detach. You do not leave with a dramatic ending. You leave with a whisper. You stop showing up for the fight. You stop offering your energy to the same old circus. And somehow that calm withdrawal says more than 1,000 emotional speeches ever could. Here is where it gets uncomfortable for the people around you. They feel the difference fast. Your replies become shorter. Your tone becomes cleaner. Your energy, once wide open and easy to access, moves behind a strong wall. You speak less and observe more. You stop acting like a participant in every emotional scene and start watching like someone who finally understands the script. The same empathy that once made you easy to predict now makes you hard to read. And that unsettles people. They can no longer press a button and get the old reaction. They cannot control what they cannot trigger. That is why people often call this version of you cold. But cold is the wrong word. You are not cold. You are disciplined. You are no longer willing to trade peace for drama. You no longer rush to patch every crack in a relationship. You no longer hurry to fix tension that you did not create. You let the silence sit there. You let discomfort breathe. You let the moment stretch until the truth starts speaking for itself. And that is when a painful realization hits. You were never too sensitive. That label was handed to you so people could handle you carelessly and avoid accountability. The real issue was not your depth. It was your access. There is a huge difference between being emotionally deep and being available to everyone at all times. For too long, you believed your intensity was a flaw, something to hide, soften, or shrink so you could fit into rooms too small for your spirit. But your sensitivity was never the weakness. It was your gift. It was your inner compass. It was the thing that let you feel what others tried to hide. The problem was not that you felt too much. The problem was that you gave too much access to people who gave too little back. You handed out all access passes to your soul to people who could barely offer honesty, effort, or gratitude. And yes, part of you saw it. You were not blind. You noticed the lies. You noticed the inconsistency. You noticed the small insults and the mixed signals and the way their actions never matched their words. But hope made you repaint every red flag. You kept telling yourself they would understand if you explained better, loved harder, stayed longer. But some people did not stay because they valued you. They stayed because you absorbed impact. You were useful to their dysfunction. You carried what they dropped and blamed yourself for the weight. That is what finally ends. This new stage strips away one of your oldest fears, the fear of being alone, and replaces it with something stronger and far more honest, the fear of losing yourself inside someone else's disrespect. That is the real turning point. You begin to understand that being alone in a quiet room is far lighter than sitting across from people who ignore you, dismiss you, mock you, or slowly erase your spirit one moment at a time. Loneliness can pass. Disrespect sinks in. It spreads like poison. Once you understand that, you stop wasting your life trying to argue for your own worth. You realize that if someone needs a full lecture on why you deserve simple human decency, the relationship is already broken. So instead of debating, you start enforcing. You stop asking permission to have limits. You stop announcing boundaries like a warning sign. You simply live them, quietly, clearly, fully. And yes, this makes people uncomfortable. The people who benefited from your lack of limits will panic the moment you stop bending. When you no longer reach out first every time, they will call you distant. When you stop giving extra time, extra money, extra emotional labor, they will call you selfish. When you stop fixing problems they created, they will act confused. Let them. Their reaction is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that the arrangement changed. People who only liked you when you were easy to use will naturally resist the version of you that has standards. That resistance is not your burden. It is just the sound of someone losing access they never deserved. Remember that. Really remember it. Because if you forget, guilt will try to drag you backward into old patterns dressed up as kindness. There is another truth most people do not want to face. Predictability can destroy respect. If your forgiveness is always guaranteed, many people stop valuing it. If they know they can hurt you, disappear, return, and still find the door open, then there is no pressure for them to grow. No reason to change. You become a sure thing. And a sure thing in many human dynamics is not respected. It is managed. It is used. This stage teaches you that access to your inner world is not a basic setting. It is a privilege. And a privilege must be earned again and again through honesty, effort, consistency, and care. Once you see that, a lot becomes clear very quickly. You begin to notice that some people do not actually miss you when you step back. They miss your availability. They miss the free comfort, the favors, the emotional labor, the way you made their life easier while yours quietly got heavier. They do not miss your heart. They miss your compliance. And the moment you stop overfunctioning, the whole truth of the connection starts to show. It is like draining water from a lake and finally seeing all the broken things sitting at the bottom. If a friendship or romance collapses the second you stop carrying the emotional weight for both sides, then it was never stable. It was never mutual. It only survived because you kept lifting what two people were meant to share. That is not love. That is not loyalty. That is not depth. That is a burden. And burdens are heavy because they are not meant to live in your hands forever. So stop calling inconsistency mysterious. Stop dressing confusion up as complexity. Most of the time, inconsistency means low interest or weak character. If they wanted to be clear, they would be clear. If they wanted to show up, they would show up. The evidence is usually simple. Real power is not in how fast you answer disrespect. It is not in the perfect comeback. It is not in the loud speech that leaves everyone stunned for a moment and changes nothing by morning. Real power is self-control. Before this shift, your nervous system was leading your life. A change in someone's tone could throw you off. A dry text could send you into hours of overthinking. A delayed reply could make your mind create 10 different stories. You reacted fast because reaction gave temporary relief. If you explained, defended, fixed, or reached out, at least you felt like you were doing something. But now you know better. Now, when something tries to trigger you, you pause. That pause changes everything. In that small space, you ask a better question. Is this situation real and present, or is it touching an old wound? Is this truth, or is this fear? That one pause saves you from giving away your peace just to calm your anxiety for 5 minutes. And once you master that, silence becomes a tool, not a weapon, a tool. You let people speak longer. You stop jumping in to defend yourself from every lie, every half-truth, every strange projection. You stop filling awkward gaps that belong to them. And when you stop interrupting patterns, people reveal themselves. Their stories stop lining up. Their excuses start sounding thin. Their behavior begins to expose what your old over-explaining once tried to hide. This is where another lesson lands hard. Not every emotion deserves an audience. You may feel something strongly, and it may still not deserve expression in that moment. Immediate honesty is not always wisdom. Sometimes blurting every hurt is just another way of leaving yourself unprotected. You learn to process first, settle your heartbeat, and then decide if a response is worth the cost. Very often, the strongest response is none at all. That does not mean you become heartless. It means you become selective, and that is a huge difference. People misunderstand this stage because they think peace must look cold. They think boundaries must mean bitterness. But the truth is the opposite. You still feel deeply. You still have love. You still have empathy. You still understand pain in a way many people never will. The difference now is that your care is no longer careless. Your heart is no longer open to anyone just because they show up. You stop living like your presence is free and unlimited. You understand your energy has value. Your time has value. Your softness has value. Your loyalty has value. So the question running your life changes. You no longer wake up asking, how do I keep this person? Or how do I make them love me? Instead, you look at their actions, not their promises, not their potential, not the version of them you keep inventing in your hope, and you ask, do they deserve access to me? That question clears entire rooms. It exposes weak ties, fake bonds, one-sided love, and emotional arrangements that only worked when you were under-functioning for yourself and over-functioning for everyone else. And the strongest part of this transformation is that it happens without a big announcement. You do not need a speech. You do not need a dramatic post. You do not need to send a long message explaining how much you have changed. You simply move differently. You answer slower. You say less. You stop checking in on people who never check in on you. You stop giving updates to people who only use information against you. You stop making yourself easy to reach for people who only reach when they need something. Move quietly. That matters. Because when you move quietly, nobody gets the chance to debate your growth or talk you out of your standards. They just feel the difference, and by then, it is already real. And now comes the hardest truth of all. Once you see the pattern clearly, going back becomes a choice. If you keep returning to the same painful dynamics after the truth is obvious, then it is no longer just about their manipulation. It becomes about your permission. That is not meant to shame you. It is meant to wake you up. You are the gatekeeper now. You decide who gets a seat at your table. You decide who gets your time, your care, your softness, your attention. Being selective is not cruel. It is responsible. It is how you protect what is sacred in you. For most of your life, you became a master at understanding everybody else. You studied their pain, their wounds, their childhood stories, their hidden fears. You found reasons for behavior that should have been a deal breaker. You stayed loyal when things got ugly. You fought for people who had already mentally left. You chose us over me again and again. You proved your loyalty many times, but the person you forgot to be loyal to was yourself. That season must end. All the energy you spent analyzing other people now has to turn inward. You have to stop proving how much hurt you can survive and start proving how much respect your soul requires. And yes, real growth will cost you people. That is not a side effect. That is part of the process. As you become stronger, clearer, and more boundaried, you stop matching the people who were comfortable with the old version of you. Time does not equal alignment. History does not guarantee access. Knowing someone for years does not give them the right to keep dishonoring who you are now. If the connection no longer matches your peace, your values, or your future, you must be willing to release it without writing an essay, without offering a defense, and without apologizing for your evolution. If your silence suddenly shakes the room, let it shake. If people feel uneasy because you are no longer easy to control, let them feel it. That discomfort is not cruelty. It is the weight of your presence finally having structure. You are not here to soothe every reaction others have to your self-respect. You are not on this earth to be endlessly understood, approved of, or emotionally available for every person who asks. You are not a project for public use. You are not a convenience. Your real work is much simpler and much harder. Become unavailable for disrespect. Fully unavailable. No debate, no endless review, no emotional trial. When someone crosses the line often enough, you stop negotiating. You stop handing out one more chance to people who keep showing you the same truth in different clothes. You become so rooted in your worth that disrespect no longer even makes you angry the way it used to. It makes you uninterested. That is a different kind of power. When someone violates your peace, you no longer need the perfect speech to explain your hurt in clean, mature language so they can maybe understand. You simply remove your presence. You close access. You let absence say what words kept failing to say. This is the death of the fixer, the end of the pleaser, the retirement of the peacekeeper who kept sacrificing mental health just to keep shaky relationships alive. Look at that, honestly. Every time you stayed quiet when you needed to speak, every time you said yes while your whole body screamed no, every time you lowered your standards to make someone else comfortable, you were betraying yourself. Quietly, repeatedly, deeply. The stage ends that war. It is where you finally choose yourself without guilt. Not from ego, not from pride, from truth, from survival, from self-respect that no longer asks permission to exist. So this is not about becoming harsh. It is not about becoming bitter, robotic, or impossible to love. It is about becoming aligned. Your kindness becomes a choice instead of a reflex. Your love becomes something valuable instead of something handed out like a participation prize. Your empathy remains, but now it is guided by wisdom. Your softness remains, but now it answers to standards. Your heart remains, but now it has a gate. And that changes everything. Because once you stop measuring your worth by how much pain you can carry for others, your whole life starts to reorganize itself. You stop chasing. You stop convincing. You stop translating your soul for people who were never listening with good faith. You stop treating access to you like a permanent right. You start protecting your mind. You start honoring your body when it says enough. You start noticing how peaceful life feels when you are no longer dragged into every storm. And maybe that is the biggest shift of all. You no longer see peace as something you get after everyone else is happy. You see it as your responsibility, your baseline, your home. That is why this version of you can look dangerous to people who only knew how to approach the old version. The old version reacted, explained, stayed, absorbed. The new version watches, discerns, decides, leaves, and it does so without a performance. That quiet strength scares people who depended on your confusion. It unsettles people who counted on your guilt. It frustrates people who only felt powerful when you were easy to pull back in. But none of that is your problem anymore. You have already done the hard part. You learned how to be there for everybody else. Now you learn the deeper power, the rarer power, the power that changes your whole life from the inside out, being there for yourself. And once that becomes real, not in theory, not in quotes, but in daily action, everything changes. Not just your relationships. You change completely.